John, good to see you, man. Thanks for doing this.
It's my pleasure. Great to see you, Willie. It's
So
been
we're
too long.
it's been too long. We've been all locked up in our homes for so long. Hopefully we get to see each other in the flesh sometime soon.
Yes.
What's it been like for you guys? We've kind of kept track with you on Instagram and Chrissy's Instagram and following the
Yeah.
kids getting their stuffed animals married and celebrating birthdays and everything else. How's it been?
Yes, we're desperate for content over here, so we're just no. We honestly so much of it has been about keeping the kids entertained, and Chrissy's so good at it. She's always being creative and coming up with new ideas to keep them engaged and entertained during this time. And I think for them, they're happiest during quarantine because they get to see us all the time, and they're not used to that. And I'm afraid they're getting too used to seeing us all the time.
It's true.
If we'll ever get to go back to work.
It's true. And it's a different challenge when they're 4 years old and 2 years
Yeah,
old. I've got 10 years old and 13. They can kind of handle
yeah.
themselves a little bit. But Luna
They
and
can handle
Miles need
themselves,
you
and they
guys.
probably have more connections with their friends
Right.
at your kids' age than my kids do. Our kids, they would much rather hang out with us, I think, than any of their friends. So they're in heaven right now.
And Father's Day is coming up as we sit here speaking. It's a couple of days away. Any
Yeah,
idea what the kids and Chrissy might have up their sleeves for you?
I have no idea, but I've worked harder for this Father's Day than any of the fathers because I have an album coming out, which has already come out as we air this interview. And then tonight, we've worked on a Father's Day special for ABC that will air tonight. So I've worked harder for this Father's Day than any Father's Day in my life. Uh, and it's been fun, but it's been a lot of work. And I think I'll just want to relax on the actual Father's Day.
That's the best gift of them all, just some time to relax. So you mentioned the album Bigger Love. You've called it the sexiest album you've ever made. I guess that's appropriate from the sexiest man alive, right? You kind of had to
Well,
make the sexiest album you've
it's
made.
funny. I was talking about it. I think I talked with Jimmy about it at the time when I said that quote, and I still think it's that, but more to it. There's a lot of love, there's a lot of joy, a lot of hope, some nostalgia, songs about getting through tough times together, and it's a little bit of everything. But it's definitely got a nice section of good baby making music.
That's its own genre, baby making music. You've nailed that one. So what is it like to make an album under these circumstances? Obviously, you started a long, long time ago before there
Yeah.
was any word of a pandemic, but finishing the album in these times, deciding whether or not it was the right time to put it out, how did that all work for you?
Well, we've been working on the album since early 2019, and some of the songs are actually much older than that. But we've been working in earnest on the album since early 2019, and so we finished writing all the songs that are embodied on the album before the pandemic really took off in America, and before we were on quarantine. And so don't listen to the songs thinking that they were written during this time. But I think some of the songs actually feel right in this moment. Some of them are about resilience and about love getting us through tough times. And then some of them are just fun, joyful, uplifting songs that I think will be great songs for this summer. And as people are trying to emerge from what's been a really tough spring, I think they'll be pretty uplifting.
So what is your process, John? I mean, you talked about 18 months to make an album. When you sit down, this is your seventh studio album, and you
Yeah.
say, okay, it's time to put something out again. As somebody on the outside looking in, I don't even imagine where you start. Like how do you begin the idea of an album?
Well, some artists, they come to it thinking they have a kind of a thesis of what they're trying to accomplish with that album, and they have a plan, and maybe they even have a concept that they have developed for the album that everything will be inspired by. But for me, I usually don't have that. I usually, unless it's a kind of a specialty album like a Christmas album or the album I did with the Roots, Wake Up, which was about protest songs and celebrating that tradition of protest songs. When I do just a regular John Legend album, I don't usually have an idea ahead of time of exactly what it's going to come out like. I just start writing and see what happens, see where my muse sends me, see where my inspiration sends me. And then it starts to take shape, and every album starts to have a personality after a while. And you start to feel that when you start to recognize which songs are connecting more for you and other people that listen to it, which songs feel like they are the heart of the album and the heart of the creativity of the album. And then you're able to figure out, oh, this is what I should call this album. This is what themes these songs are kind of coalescing around. And for me, that's how I kind of discover my way into what the album theme is going to be.
And as you came close to wrapping up the album, obviously the pandemic hit. Did that affect the way you finished the album at all? I mean, just as a practical question, getting in the room with
Yes.
people and doing all the things you normally would do?
Yes, it did change the way we collaborated on the finishing up process. So normally I would have been in the studio more for the wrapping up process, but fortunately we have technology that allows us to exchange files, have Zoom calls where we go over notes with each other. All of these elements of technology that we have now to collaborate without being in the same room have become very useful now. I think the hardest thing was something like getting the string arrangements done, because not only do you have to have them arranged, which is just a one-person job, but the actual playing of the orchestral arrangements requires more than one person. And so we had to kind of do it in a more roundabout way this time, so that people could do it and distance as well.
It's amazing what you guys are able to do just over a laptop to polish off an album. So
Absolutely.
it's called Bigger Love. It's one of the
Yeah.
singles off the album. What is Bigger Love to you? What does that mean right now?
Well, the song that inspired that title was a song about love being powerful, love being resilient, and having a sense of optimism and hope that love will get you through tough times. And I feel like that feels like the perfect sentiment for this moment right now. And it felt like the perfect title for the album. And I think in general, the album is very expansive and loving, and it reflects a true kind of diversity of my musical inspirations. And so it feels big in that sense too, in that it encompasses several genres and moods. And I felt like Bigger Love as a title made perfect sense for it.
Now, will you play the songs for Chrissy as you go? Does she get some editorial control on any of this?
She hears them usually later. She likes to hear them when they're close to the finish line, only because there's a thing called demo-itis. In the music business, it's when you fall in love with the early demos of something, and then you never want to hear them sound differently after that.
Right.
And as musicians, we're usually tweaking and arranging and doing a lot of things to it. And she usually falls in love with the early version and doesn't like to hear the later version. And so she's like, from now on, I just want to hear it when it's closer to being done. And so she hears them, but it's usually much later in the process.
So how do you think this fits in? I mentioned 7 albums, Bigger Love. Is it a different sound in any way? Is it something new for your fans, or is it what fans have come to expect from you?
I think it'll be a blend. I think there are a lot of sounds that they've heard me do before. I think some of the songs feel like even my first album, Get Lifted, which came out way back in 2004. Some of them feel like Once Again. Some of them feel like Evolve or Love in the Future. And then some may sound different than anything I've done before. But I think when people hear it, they'll think, oh, this sounds like a John Legend album. But it sounds like kind of the diversity of my influences.
What's it like, John, putting out an album right now, just as a business question even? Like, is it a lot different than in the past, or not really, because people are streaming anyway, wherever they are?
Yeah, that's what's changed is we were so dependent on physical people showing up to a record store for so long in this business. But that has already changed before the pandemic to now, where it's, hugely unlikely that most people are listening to these things on physical products. The only physical product they're listening to it on is their mobile phone or their whatever devices they use at home. So streaming makes it so we can just release it. We're not worried about people having to show up and stand in line and all these other things. And that means we sell fewer records now. We get fewer transactions of money from people, but people have more access to music, and they can stream, as much as they want. And, our fans are streaming the music. They're not just streaming new music, they're streaming my old songs, whether Lifted or All of Me or whatever it is. And I think it's been better for the fans that music is so accessible. The whole pretty much extent of popular music can be accessed at any given moment. And I think that's a beautiful, powerful thing. It makes music more omnipresent in people's lives.
I also feel like people are sitting at home right now for the most part, and they're maybe rediscovering old music they forgot they
Yeah,
loved. It's
we
nice.
we we talk to the streaming services, and streaming is up right now. Music,
Yeah.
of course, video and television streaming is up because people have a little more free time to do that. But even music is up as well, and what they're going for is that nostalgia. A lot of times, comfort. Even with food, we're seeing with Chrissy's recipes, people want things that evoke memories from their youth or from moments that they hold fondly in their memories.
How different, John, do you think on the other side of this, whenever we all start getting back together and you get to go out on the road again and resume your life, not just life, but do you think the music business changes at all because of this? Or is it just a kind of a pause in where we were before the
Well,
pandemic?
like I said, I think we were ahead of the game when it came to streaming. I think the movie business will be interesting because now that they're releasing movies on directly to streaming rather than letting it go to theaters first. I think that's a more fundamental change for the movie business. But for us, we were already doing that. We were already relying mostly on streaming for our consumption. And then that leaves the question of live shows. And I think live shows will never go out of style. I think there's always going to be something special about being in the same room with an artist that you love, being in the same room with other people that love that artist and enjoying that experience together. I think that magic will never go away, and people miss that magic. I miss it. I think my audience misses it. And as soon as people are able to do so safely, I think they'll go right back to it.
Yeah, we can't wait to all be in those arenas again, listening to you. We talked about the pandemic and the impact it's had on music and on everything else. But obviously, in the last 3 weeks or so, since the killing of George Floyd in Minneapolis, that's
Mm-hmm.
added an entirely different layer to even to
Yep.
listening to your music, maybe. Do you see that you didn't write these songs about what's happening necessarily right now, obviously, but that there
Yeah.
may be something in those songs that people hear that they apply to what they're watching every day?
Well, I think we've seen so many images of Black people in mourning and outrage, or even literally with knees on our necks, that I feel like this album is kind of an antidote to that. That is about celebrating joy and celebrating love and celebrating resilience. And though this album wasn't written in response to what happened just now, I think we could all use a lift right now and some love right now and some joy. And I think this album can provide that for people.
You obviously are no stranger to social justice. You've been talking about it and fighting about it for as long as I've known you, and well before that, obviously. What do you think, not as a musician, but as an American, as an African American man, is happening in the streets right now? How do you explain it to people? What is that energy that we're all witnessing?
Well, of course, this conversation around the difficult relationship Black people have had with the police has been going on for the longest time. You know, this nation was founded on slavery, and then so many aspects of the way Black people have been treated in America are kind of descendants of slavery. You know, this has been an ongoing conversation. I think the difference now is one, the advent of the cell phone camera has made these incidents more visible to more people. And I think the utter agony of watching a man die in a 9-minute video, and to see the callous look of indifference on the officer's face as they killed him, it was galvanizing and powerful for a lot of people. And what's inspiring about it is that you've seen a real multiracial coalition coming together in the streets of America, and even not just in America, but in Europe and all around the world. People saying, you know, this has got to stop. And I think the power of that singular video was able to galvanize people in a way that we haven't seen in a while. And it's making people ask some serious questions about the way our society is structured, where our criminal justice system has interacted with Black people and other communities of color over the years. And I think those are needed questions that we need to be asking. And we need to think big and boldly about the kind of change that we want to see.
I've talked to so many of my friends, had great conversations in the last few weeks about that video, the George Floyd video. And what they've said to me is, what you have to understand, Willie, is that I see myself under that officer's knee. I see my dad under that officer's knee. I
Yeah.
see my young son, who's not old enough to even have interacted with police yet. I see him someday under that knee.
Yeah.
So, what did you see, John, when you watched those 8 minutes and 46 seconds?
Well, we do see our family members when that happens. My wife and I talk about our nephews. My my younger brother has a son who's 20 years old, and I could see him in moments like that having a misunderstanding with officers, and I worry for him. I worry for particularly once they hit a certain age and their body is deemed as threatening to other people, that they could experience that same thing. And it's worrying. It makes me think about every time they're out at night, or, every time they're, they just are doing something stupid that teenage boys do. You just worry that could lead to something tragic like that.
Yeah, you mentioned the multiracial coalition in the streets right now, and I've heard a lot of people say this time feels different. And as somebody who's covered a lot of stories, I always get wary of that, because we've had school
Yeah,
shootings and people say this time's different, and then it's not really
exactly.
different. So, do you feel like this is different? And if so, what does that mean exactly? How will it be different?
Well, I think it's different because the conversation is moving. I think for a long time we were just saying, let's reform, let's retrain the police, and now we're saying, do we need so many police in our streets? Is their presence making life better? Are we investing our money in our city and state budgets in the right things that will make our lives safer and healthier? And can we think about public safety on a more holistic way, rather than simply, do we have enough guys with badges and guns on the street? We've been having that same conversation around incarceration with our jails and prisons as well. Are we safer because we spend all this money on policing jails and prisons? Or would it be better spent on other things that would be more edifying for the community? If we look at, the investments we could be making in pre-K education that have been shown to change the arcs of people's lives, are we spending enough on those things? Are we spending enough to make sure our teachers are well paid and have all the training and the support that they need? Are we spending enough money to make sure everyone else has health care as we are still experiencing this pandemic? Every choice we make as a society, politics is really about those choices. It's about those priorities. And as a nation, we've decided that policing and jails and prisons are the way we deal with problems here. And a lot of us are now suggesting that we should rethink that. And I think that's a movement in this conversation, that more people are thinking about that and talking about it.
Well, you explain it really well, because I think when there are a lot of Americans who hear defund the police and things like that, and they go, whoa, whoa, whoa. They go,
Yeah.
do not like
They
what I
envision
saw in that
anarchy.
video, but I want
Yeah.
cops in my neighborhood. So
Yeah.
how do you explain that defund the police, whether you believe that or not, as reform or something
Well,
else?
the bottom line is every dollar the city spends is a dollar they don't spend on something else. So if you spend, half of your city's budget on policing, that means other things have to suffer because of that. And so what everyone's suggesting with this defund movement is literally a conversation about the budget. It's saying we're spending so much on this one thing that police are being called when there's a mental health crisis. Police are being called when there's someone with a drug addiction crisis. Police are being called for domestic disputes. They're being called for all these things that they're not really trained to do. A lot of them are trained to be, to be tough guys and warriors, and they're not social workers, and they shouldn't be. If we're spending all that money on this one thing, that means we're not spending it on these other things. And all we're saying is, let's reconsider our priorities and decide our budgets accordingly.
So what do you think, John, is a good practical change? We've already seen some things come up, no knock warrants, things like that. There have been some moves already in terms of holding police officers accountable, but what's a practical change? I ask you because you are so knowledgeable and you've been talking about these things forever. that would make life better, that's reasonable to most people, and that could happen tomorrow?
Well, the issue with a lot of those reforms and even law changes and rule changes is that in some of these cities where we've seen people get choked, for instance, by the police,
Right.
the chokehold was banned at the time it happened, and the officer was charged and not convicted. So a lot of times these rule changes are nice, but uh, if the effect is still the same, that police can act with impunity, then it doesn't matter. So I do think there needs to be teeth behind these rules and regulations, and real consequences and accountability around these rules and regulations that are supposed to control police's behavior. But also, I do believe that we need to reconsider our funding of the police, and I think it's an important part of the conversation.
So, how do you see, John? You've never been shy about speaking out on issues of the role of well-known people. I mean, I think we've seen the taboo or the risk maybe for celebrities speaking out kind of go away. I remember it used to be that Michael
Mhm.
Jordan or other people just didn't want to alienate people. Now you see LeBron James starting a voting rights organization, people like
Yeah.
yourself. It seems like that door has been kicked down and you don't
Well,
see a risk, right?
it was already down. If you look at Muhammad
Well,
Ali
right.
and Stevie Wonder, you look at Bob Dylan, John Lennon, all these artists spoke out over the years. They spoke out about the Vietnam War. They spoke out about civil rights. They spoke out about women's rights over the years. And I think celebrities have always been part of the conversation. But I do believe this conversation should be driven by experts, by organizers, by activists. And celebrities, I think, we have a role in amplifying the work that these folks are doing, but they're doing more of the hard work, and we should amplify their voices and make sure they're heard. And it's not about us.
I think that's probably the smart approach to it. And I before I let you go, just on the album and the role of music right now, just not even specifically to what's happening,
Yeah,
but just the beauty of sitting back on your deck or wherever you are and putting on a
yeah.
John Legend album, and just letting it go.
Well, I wrote about releasing music during this time, and a lot of what I said was about just that: is the idea that music isn't going to save the world. We're not going to cure the virus. We're not going to fix all the world's problems, but we can give people a bit of an escape. We can lift them. We can inspire them. We can give them some hope. We can make them feel a connection to their loved ones, and make that feel even stronger. And so that's what music can do. It's powerful. It's beautiful. Um, I know I'm humble about the amount of impact music can have, but I do believe it does have some kind of magic to it that transcends a lot of differences that we may have otherwise.
It's been a great escape for the last 3 months. Can't wait to have everybody hear your album. I got a chance to listen to it. It's awesome, man. Congratulations. Yes.
Thank
Now I'll let you unmute Adam's family at this point. So I'm not the villain in your household.
Now my kids can be free to talk again.
John, great to talk to you. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. Say hi to Chrissy.
Will do.